Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Rebecca Heath joining me. Hi Rebecca.
Hi everyone. Hi.
So I think we've had Rebecca join us a few times before as author for the day, and I think I've interviewed you before as well.
Uh,
I can't
Maybe
quite,
I think so.
yeah, can't, but I know you've certainly been involved in our group before, so good to have you back again.
Good to be here. Good to talk to everyone.
So, just a little bit about Rebecca. Rebecca studied science at university, worked in hospitality and teaching, and wrote obsessively whenever she could find the time. She wrote several young adult novels as Beck Nicholas, published in Australia and Germany, and she lives in Adelaide, halfway between the city and the sea, with her husband, three children, and a much loved border collie. She's written two novels for adults. The first was The Summer Party, which was released in January last year, and her latest one is The Dinner Party, which was released in January this year. So thanks so much for joining us. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a bit about The Dinner Party.
Sure, I've got it here, and it's I think behind me in my bookshelf. The dinner party. So, 1979, out of suburban Adelaide. Everyone's building the homes of their dreams and the communities of their dreams, and it's a beautiful summer night. And a group of families get together for a dinner party. The thing is, they leave all the kids at home, as is normal back then. And then when one of the dads goes to check on the kids, baby Megan Callaghan isn't there. And the question begins, what happened to Megan Callaghan while all the adults were having a party? And it haunts the family for 40 years until on the 40th anniversary of her going missing, Megan Callaghan walks back through the door of her family home. And the question is it her? If it is, where has she been all this time? If it's not, who is it? And what really happened that night?
And I have to say, I've been reading The Dinner Party myself. I'm about halfway through it and really like the suspense of it. It's really great. Just wondering what the first idea was you had for The Dinner Party.
I guess the thing is, I grew up in out of Adelaide. My parents built on the very edge of the city, opposite a massive conservation park, which is what appears in the book. And I always heard about these dinner parties. Mum had a group of, I think, three or four, maybe five neighbourhood friends, and they would get together even to when I was probably in my early 20s. They would get together every month, and those that are still around, I think, still do. Um, and they would leave the kids at home. And once I had kids of my own, and in the modern days with, Madeleine McCann and everything like that, I
Mm,
just could not imagine that
mm,
they would just go. And Mum was always like, it was safe, it was different. And I'm like,
mm,
and she said, you were always there when we got home. And my
mm,
question, my whole life was, but what if I wasn't?
mm,
And I have older sisters. I have two, unlike Megan, who only has one. And I was always thought, what would happen to the family, to that neighbourhood group that were such good friends, and to the sister that was left behind, and how that would
mm,
haunt her, and not just her, but her family going forward, because these things have a ripple effect. And then, just the mystery of it as well. So it's kind
mm.
of looking at the family dynamics and then just the mystery as well.
Yeah. And just wondering from like reader feedback, if you had a lot of readers say yes, their parents did that to them as well.
Yes, a lot. And from
Yeah.
different things, like in country South Australia, it would be all the parents parked by the front gate and the kids just went to sleep in the car, so they'd all be
Mm,
ready to go home in the back of the ute, no
mm,
seatbelts, no nothing, just chucked in sleeping bags while they'd, have a barbecue at a neighbour's place and things
mm.
like that. So yeah, it's been quite, most people were like, it happened to us as well. I have had a few people say, how could anyone do that? And
Mm.
it's kind of hard to imagine a different time now, I think.
Yeah, different times. And I really liked as well the food that was on the menu as well.
Actually, my mum passed away 25 years ago or so, so I couldn't speak to her,
Mm,
but her best friend, who was at all the dinner parties, I sat down with Annie Ann and interviewed her and got full menus. She kept a diary and she
mm.
had menus of what they
Oh,
had, and she talked about how they had the Women's Weekly, and they'd kind of that friendly competition, try and outdo each other with the, who made the best stroganoff
mm,
and things like that. And someone got a fondue set, and so it was really fun to incorporate all that. And I've cooked a little bit of it myself because
Mm.
I particularly the apricot chicken was a big thing because
Yeah.
Mum made that growing up and I
Mm.
hated it. And Mum was always like, you like apricots and you like chicken, you
Mm.
have to eat it. You know, there was no choice.
Mm.
And so I remade it the other day for the kids and I'm like, it's bad. It's not bad. Like my kids wouldn't eat it though, but I was like, you know, it's apricot and chicken and a bit of French onion soup mix. You know.
Yeah. And did you have to do much research for the dinner party?
There was research, always the police procedural stuff
Yeah.
is something I need to look
Mm.
at. And I've had people are really, really kind. And I think most authors will tell you that people are happy to answer questions and then all mistakes are on us. And I had actually 3 lovely police ladies help me with the research, answering questions. And one of them is now actually published herself. She
Oh,
wrote
really?
Lenny Marks. She's
Okay.
a police, but
Yeah.
about 4 years ago, before she was published, she helped
Yeah.
me in her role as a policewoman. And obviously, Annie Ann was great use for all the 70s stuff.
Mm.
And then I based the home on my childhood home, but it was my childhood home as I remember it, which might not, you know, I haven't been back there for 30 years. So things like the big geometric print wallpaper and the terrible brown carpet and a chandelier, kind of plate glass chandelier lights and things like that. All those details that kind of were combing my memory and trying to remember and find old photos and things.
Mm. And we've got a few people watching, so just wanted to say to those watching, if you've got any questions for Rebecca, please type them and I can read them out. Kim says that your book sounds very intriguing.
Thank you.
And Belinda says she's read both of your books and found that they have great unpredictable twists.
That's good. Sometimes they surprise me, something that I find. I think if I'm surprised, I find that works in the book. I tend to start with an idea of what I think happened, but as I get to know the characters, it tends to, quite often I didn't know completely what happened until I really understand all their motivations and exactly who's hiding what secret.
So do you have a bit of a plan when you start out, or it just goes with the flow?
I like to have a bit of a plan as a safety net. As I think you said in my bio, I come from a science background and that's all about, you know, plans and procedures. And then my characters take over and it goes out the window. So, but it is nice to have a bit of structure to fall back on. But I do tend to just listen to what the characters want to do.
And Kim says the lovely 70s, loved it, but very happy to leave that styling behind.
Yes, I don't think I could have pulled off some of the outfits that I was describing in the 70s. The hair, like the big hair, and my mum was a hairdresser, and I remember her doing, you know, lots of people's hair for 70s parties and things, and it was a bit more challenging than I'm able to do myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was saying to you before, I love your bookshelf in the back. Looks great.
Thank you. That was my birthday present about 4 years ago. My husband had it built. He's an IT person, so he wasn't going to, but I always wanted a bookshelf with a rolling ladder and
Oh, the
everything.
ladder rolls along. That's great. Yeah.
And then I realised that I didn't quite have enough books. So my aim since then has been to fill it with as many books as possible, which is pretty easy to do. And you can't see up the top, my son has filled it with a couple of Lego cars. So
Oh, okay.
I'm intent on getting some more books to fill up the top
Oh,
there.
yeah, that's quite high, isn't it?
And get rid of the cars and fill it all with books.
So is there anything that you might have been reading lately that you could recommend to us?
I'm pretty biased. I do love Australian authors overwhelmingly, and I read quite a bit of UK crime and thrillers as well. I did just finish Ali Lowe's The School Run.
Oh, yes, I read that recently, yeah.
And really enjoyed that. And I just started today Candice Fox's new one, Devil's Kitchen. And then I tend to also listen to I think it's an English author, The Truth About Her by Annie Taylor on audiobook. I spend a lot of time walking the border collie and I tend to listen to books or actually do notes to myself about my book while I'm walking with her.
And what are you working on at the moment?
At the moment, I'm working on edits for book 3. I've just started doing some of that, and that's out in January again. With a provisional, it could be The Wedding Party, but we're not sure on the title yet. And that's basically about 10 years ago, Ollie Rhodes was being silly as a 16-year-old on a jetty, and he passed away. And then 10 years later, all the families that used to gather at that beach get together for a wedding, but someone's not going to make it off the boat.
Okay. Sounds like another great read.
Hopefully, it's all a bit about, how a family deals with the trauma of losing their son, and then who thought it was an accident, and who's keeping secrets about what really happened that day.
And Kim's got a great question. She wonders if there was anything you changed in your writing process from book 1 to book 2.
I learnt a lot, actually. As it happened, book 2, The Dinner Party, was the first adult book I wrote, and I wrote it before COVID, and I had been writing young adult, and then I had this idea about, a missing baby, and I just poured this book out, and it was very rough. And then I wrote The Summer Party, and that's what got picked up first. And then I edited The Dinner Party with everything I'd learned about tension and stakes and all those, how to work with my publisher and all the things that, and I met a lot of readers in the last year and a half nearly, and hearing what works for the readers without kind of, letting them get too much into my head. Like when you hear, I really love the setting, or I really love the way you did that with the character, you try and, I think the aim is to do better every book.
Yeah, that's interesting then, that your first one was actually the second one published.
Yeah, and but I did delete 30,000 words.
Oh,
and
really?
Added another 10,000, so I changed it quite a bit in the edits.
And can you tell us a bit about how you got that first book published?
Basically, I had been writing YA with an Australian publisher, with Harlequin, and they said that they weren't going to publish Australian young adult anymore.
Okay.
And so I was trying to write a little bit of other YA, and I just could not let go of this idea for an adult thriller. And I thought, well, I have no deadlines. I have no one, with expectations. So I wrote it, and I got some good reactions from the YA stuff I'd been doing. But when I put out what turned out to be The Dinner Party, I got a huge reaction from agents here and overseas. And so I got an agent in the UK, and she worked with me on both books, and got me, I have a UK publisher primarily, and then they publish it through Bloomsbury Books here.
And do you think YA is something you might go back to?
Oh, I do tend to do quite often a timeline that has a little bit of YA in it. It's hard for me to shake it, because I do think that sometimes things that happen in your particularly late teenage years can have a huge effect on the person you become as an adult. But at the same time, you can grow and change from there. So I do tend to often have, like, The Summer Party has dual timeline with a teenage protagonist. And my next story that will be out in January has dual timeline with a teenage protagonist as well, to find out what happened, 10 years earlier.
And when you do dual timeline, do you write them just intertwined like we read them, or do you like to try and keep them separate?
I tend to I write whichever one is talking to me that day, and whichever one I know better what's coming, and then I kind of piece it together afterwards and break it up a little bit, and I focus, for a while on one, and then if I'm, need to think a bit, I'll go back to the other one.
And have you had a favourite character so far in your books?
It's like trying to pick a favourite child, which is usually whoever's being least of a rat bag, having teenagers. But I do tend to like dogs, and I will never hurt a dog in a book, because I do find that I have Hades and I have Plank, and they do tend to, I think they reflect a lot on a character. So for particularly in a dinner party, the relationship between Frank and his granddaughter is kind of the fact that he leaves her his dog to look after, I think says a lot about, you know, for me, the person I trust with my dog is you know, almost different to who I trust with my children.
Yeah.
And the kind of innocence of a dog's reaction can tell you a lot about a character, and how someone treats a dog can tell you a lot about a character. I think they're really, it's fun. And cats maybe. We've just got a kitten, so I have to try and think about cats as well.
Yeah, you'll have to add some cats in the and Kim wonders if there's any other genres that you might like to write in the future.
I have written a little bit of romance before, but not been published. I tend to read across genres. I've had a YA sci-fi published as well in the US. So I've always read everything from when I was little. I was the youngest of three, and Mum had a bookshelf not as pretty as this one, but nearly as many books. And we didn't, you know, with a single parent family, we didn't always have a lot, but we had a lot of books, and I was allowed to read everything. So I was reading, you know, heavy science fiction at the same time as reading Jackie Collins, probably way before I should have been reading either, at about, you know, 9 or 10. So I've always read across genres. So it depends on the idea mostly, but I'm really enjoying the kind of domestic noir that I'm writing at the moment.
And growing up, had you always thought you'd become a writer?
I always dreamed of becoming a writer, but I actually thought, I think one of the things about social media, which can be quite terrifying, is that you can see that writers are real people, and you can connect with writers on Instagram or in situations like this. But when I was a kid, a writer was some far off figure that I couldn't imagine being. And I always thought, you know, that couldn't be me with my name on a book. So I studied science, and I actually did a PhD in chemistry. But all the time, while my brilliant lab partners would be at the whiteboard solving calculus equations, I would be sitting in the corner writing everything from children's stories to romances. So it was always what I wanted to do.
And what do you hope readers love about your books?
Hopefully they want to find out what happens next. And I really love writing interesting characters that aren't completely good or completely bad. I kind of I tend to look at both sides of things as a person, and I kind of like really think everyone usually has some reason for the things they do, even if they seem like, you know, they're a little bit evil. And I really like the Australian and South Australian settings to kind of, I feel like we have so many great authors here, and the Australian flavour, I really like to read Australian flavour, so I hope that comes through. And I found that with being published in the UK, I get a lot of good feedback about, you know, I want to come to Australia now, or I can imagine, you know, the South Australian beaches and the beautiful, you know, countryside of Australia, without, you know, necessarily that stereotype kangaroo or koala, but that real flavour that we kind of bring.
And any authors that inspire you?
Everyone I pick up tends to. I think I know how long it takes to write a book, and even those that write a lot quicker of me, it takes a long time. And I have some really, really good author friends, so we tend to go through, you know, the long days sitting at the keyboard together. Probably too many to mention. Probably too many to mention. I just, mostly Australian authors, all the crime and thriller authors, and I know quite a few romance authors too that are doing amazing things.
And when I say to you that someone's a successful writer, what does that mean to you?
I think all I ever wanted to do was have my book in my hands, and then once. And that comes from being a child and that being the only way to read books. And then I would have been just as happy to have an ebook to just have people reading the stories I wrote. I think is successful, but I always aim to get my books out to more readers, and to talk to more people about books and ideas and characters. I mean, there's a cast of thousands from these books living in my head, and talking about them is really, really fun.
And is there any reader feedback that you can share with us that maybe surprised you or inspired you?
I think the best moment I've probably had with a reader, I did a talk just after the dinner party came out, and a lady of about 81 maybe came up to me, and she said, "Oh, you know, I read The Summer Party. Is it set on the York Peninsula?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's a fictional town, but it's based on," and I described, and I said, "Oh, it's a shack where I used to go with my cousins." And I said, "And the town's a little bit like the town where my mum grew up." And she's like, "Oh, that's the town I come from." And it turned out that she was in my mum's class at school,
wow.
in a tiny little area school with maybe 20 kids. 70 years ago, they were in a class together. And just for a moment, because as I said, mum passed away, 25 years ago, that felt like maybe she was there a little bit. And that was kind of a very small world to find her, because this is a country town 2 hours out of Adelaide.
Yeah.
And
No,
to
that's
have her
really
be in
special.
mum's class, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Mostly she remembered because my mum was a twin. She was like, "Oh, I was with the twins. That was so glamorous."
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. Looking forward to finishing the dinner party and reading more of your books.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for a great book club and great support.
Thank you, and thanks to those who asked some questions.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
See ya.